G'day, I'm Gary from Travel Outback Australia. Today we're going to be having a look at this 230 Panther 1600 rooftop tent. Now you all know that there's so many different types of these tents available these days, and many of them are the clamshell, just the straight out opening ones. Some of them open up to the side just like this one, but there's so many different types and at so many different price points. Now you may have seen I did a setup and a pack down video on this before. If you haven't, I'll put the link down below this video. But look, let's have a look at it, and I'll give you my thoughts about how it went on our recent Cape York trip. Now we set this thing up for just over a month at various places in and around our trip on the way up to Cape York, and this was the first time for us, so we weren't really sure what we were going to expect. But I've got to say I was pretty surprised by just how overall the entire setup just worked. The actual act of climbing up and down these stairs wasn't a major drama or anything, but there were a few little things here and there which I'll mention a bit later on. But overall, as you can see, this one folds out to the side. Why did we choose this Panther 1600? Well, with the Prado, there are some weight restrictions about how heavy we could go on top of the actual roof rack itself, and I didn't want to press that too much, so we ended up choosing this one for a variety of reasons, but one of which was the weight. But secondly, I like the idea that it folded out to the side, because here on the Prado we've got that big barn door, and to actually access it from the rear I think might have been a bit of a pain in the ass. So we went for this one. So overall, it's pretty easy to set up. You can get out, well, pull up somewhere and have it all set up within probably 5 or so minutes without rushing too much. But I think one of the major things that we were thinking was that by having this style of tent and having the hardtop version, we would be able to store all our bedding and stuff inside the tent. Now, whilst I can say in all honesty that yes, we were able to store our sleeping bags and our pillows inside the tent, one of the biggest cons of this tent is the mattress and the firmness of it. It basically meant that we then had to carry a mattress topper which we had to store inside the car, which took up valuable space, and we had to take that out of the car, put it into the tent, take it back out of the tent the next morning, roll it back up, put it back in the car. That to me was not one of the reasons that we got this particular style of tent. I thought if I'm going to give up the other style, which is either rolling out a swag or even our little camper that we built, I want something that is not going to be too much hassle and is going to be easy to use. So the biggest con to me is that mattress up there, which we'll have a look at in a minute. The second con is this ladder. Now I know they're made to a price point, and I know a lot of them are pretty similarly used throughout the different range of rooftop tents available, but we actually found setting this up to be a bit of a pain in the ass. Sometimes, depending on the terrain you were setting up, you either needed the ladder to go slightly higher or slightly lower. And up in this top section up here, we often found that there just wasn't enough adjustment in this area to fine tune getting this platform nice and level. And so it took a bit of messing around, not every time, but certainly probably say almost 50% of the time, to get this ladder at a point that we were comfortable with, and that would also have this sitting at approximately level. So I think looking at those two things, they're probably the worst two. The third one I think is you do get a little bit of condensation in the tent depending on environmental conditions. So if you're puffing out all that hot air during the night and it's cold outside, you are going to get condensation on generally the slippery surfaces inside the tent. What can you do about this? Well, the best thing we found was to have plenty of ventilation. So leave your windows open, get that airflow through there, and that does minimize the amount of condensation that occurs overnight. Look, so this is the mattress I was talking about. It's this lightly quilted thing that sits on the bottom here. It's approximately 65 mil thick, but we found that it was just as hard as nails laying on it without any softener on top. To me, as I said earlier, this is the biggest drawback of the tent itself. So I'll be looking at trying to replace this, I think the entire mattress with a bit of thinner memory foam and probably a slice of gel foam on top of that, just to give it that softer feel so that you can sink into it a little bit. I mentioned earlier the fact that you can leave your bedding in here. Well, to do that, you've got to roll it up, as you can see there at the back of the tent. You can see the two sock pouches laying on top of that, and by doing that and having the pillows tucked in on top, you can actually leave that stuff inside. So that was a real bonus. So notwithstanding the fact that we needed the memory topper, this would have been a winner for us. There is a crossbar that goes across this area here, and that enables you to put a little bit of upward pressure onto the roof of the tent, just so that if it does rain, the water is going to fall away to the sides. And the other thing that particular crossbar does is it does have a light. Now, the thing that we found was we didn't actually use that light. We're not big fans of having lights on everywhere, and they attract insects. It was a bit of a pain in the ass. I mean, you could put a small battery bank up in the pouch up there and run the light, but we found that just using our headlamps was sufficient to get us up here and orientated and ready for bed. And you can see on the side here the windows closed at the moment, but we would just have the fly mesh up, and we would virtually have those flaps all the way down over the course of the evening to enable a bit of air to not only circulate in the tropics themselves, but also in those other climates on the way up there that we found were quite cold outside. And to minimize this condensation forming on this black inner surface, we found that we had to have those curtain flaps open. Now, I guess, did we use those sock flaps? Well, no, not really. We found that out here we could tuck our sandals or thongs into this little flap here, and they were handy as you were coming out the door here. So overall, I think you could probably get away with those, well, without using those bags. But then again, if you were staying somewhere for a longer period of time, then you might actually hook them up onto the sail rack attachment points out the front and use them. But look, space-wise, we found it perfectly fine for two people. Length, I'm 1.8 meters, and it was perfectly fine for me. And it could probably go. You could probably go a couple of inches, or I should say 50 millimeters taller without causing any inconvenience. And yeah, overall, pretty happy with this. And packing it back down again is not all that hard. It's just a matter of putting all the rods back inside, folding the canvas across, putting the elastic loops on, and then using the ladder to fold it back onto the car. Again, as you can see in that setup and pack down video that I have made previously. So the only thing we really added in the way of weight is our recovery boards, which we stuck up on top on the two provided mounting points. Again, I was a little bit concerned about the weight, so the only other thing I put up there was a small shovel, just in case. But look, it travelled so well that I am thinking about maybe putting an awning back on, and If it does, I need to put it on this side, but I'm going to have to take into account that this folds back down to this point, so where the awning would sit could be an issue. But that is another story, my friends. So that's my thoughts on the Panther 1600 230 tent. As I said, overall pretty happy with it, and I think it's going to stay in the stable for a while to come. And it looks, I mean, it stays clean. We went through a whole lot of dusty conditions, and each time we pulled it out, it was still, yeah, looking like the same time we packed it up. So overall presentation is pretty good. Quality looks pretty reasonable for a tent of this type. Yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will try and answer them. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.